welcome to 7 Days to 740 Credit. I'm Ronnie Lambeth, and today we're going to be talking about credit cards. How many credit cards you should have, how you should use the credit cards, how to deal with inquiries from getting new credit cards, how to increase your credit limit once you have the credit cards, and why you should never close your credit card. All right, so let's get started. Inquiries. This is probably the most common question I get when I tell people they need to get new credit cards. See, the magic number to have a 740 credit score or higher, FICO wants to see at least 3 credit cards on your credit report at all times. 3 open credit cards. Now, what qualifies as a credit card? Well, a department store card would qualify. So like Kohl's, JCPenney's, Home Depot, Lowe's, Target, etc. And that card, it will only be able, or it could only be used at that department store. So like Sears, for example. Sears used to only work at Sears, but now it's a Visa card with the Sears logo on it, and it will work anywhere. That's a standard credit card. I'm not talking about that when I talked about department store cards. A department store card would be like Home Depot. It only works at Home Depot. Okay, so that's a department store card. Then we have unsecured credit cards. These are credit cards that typically you get when you don't have at least 3 other unsecured credit cards. Maybe it's because you listened to that lunatic on the radio and he said to cut up your credit cards, and so you did, and now it destroyed your credit score. Or maybe you went through a bankruptcy or went through some hardship, or you're just getting started. You would need to get a secured credit card. So for example, you go into your bank or credit union or go online to a website like mine, and you apply for a secured credit card, and you send them $200. They put that in an interest-bearing savings account, interest-bearing for them, not for you. And then they send you a credit card with a $200 credit limit. The idea here is if you max out that $200 credit card and you don't pay them back, they're simply going to take the $200 out of the savings account, put that in their pocket, report you late, eventually charge it off, and then you get a $200 charge off on your credit report. So that is the secured credit card. And then we have the unsecured credit cards. We got Visa, we got American Express, we got Discover, and of course we have a MasterCard. So Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express. Those are your big 4. And these can be hosted. When I say hosted, I should say sponsored by airlines, department stores, certain banks, etc. So most of the airlines out there have a version of a credit card. So like for me, I have American Express Delta credit cards, and then I have Citi MasterCards that are sponsored by American Airlines. There's Southwest Airlines, there's Hawaiian, Alaskan, United. Pretty much all of them have their own credit card. So when you're sitting on the plane, they always say, hey, if you apply for a credit card today, we'll give you X amount of points, and you can use that for future travel. And they get pretty pushy. The reason they get pushy is that flight attendant gets paid a commission when you open that credit card. So does the teller, or the cashier rather, at a department store. They get paid. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more, why you don't want to get a department store card. So those are the types. You have secured credit cards, you got unsecured credit cards, and you have department store cards. The last one would be a fleet gas card. So some gas stations, some gas companies offer these. They're credit cards, but they only work at particular gas stations. So that, I guess, would be the last type of card that could report to your personal credit report. So you need at least 3 credit cards at all times. 3 open credit cards, whether it's department store, whether it's a credit card that's unsecured or a secured credit card. 3 open credit cards at all times. If you do not have at least 3, you're going to have a hard time having a great credit score. And a great credit score is anything at 740 or higher. So it's pretty difficult to have a great credit score without at least 3 credit cards. I know I've said that a few times, and I will say it multiple more times because it's so important that you understand this, that you get at least 3 credit cards. Okay? And they got to be opened. All right. Let's talk about inquiries. This is what people want to know. And they will say this to me on a regular basis. Rondi, I know I need 3 credit cards and I only got 2, but I don't want a hard inquiry on my credit. Here's the thing. 90% of all inquiries are completely ignored. 90% are completely ignored. If you're not going crazy and applying for credit, FICO doesn't care. So it's not really going to impact your credit score in a big way. You might see a little bit of a decrease. That's generally from opening the account because 90% of all late payments happen within the first 2 years of the account being open. So that's really why the score goes down when you apply for new credit. It's not necessarily the inquiry. Now, the inquiries can impact you depending on the scorecard that you're in. But for the most part, they're ignored. And more importantly, you have to do the hard inquiry to get the new credit card. So it's kind of like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? What came first? Good credit or a credit card? It's really the credit card. You have to have the credit card and you have to do the inquiry. Saying that you don't want to have a hard inquiry is like me coming over to your house and you say, Rondi, I got to show you something. You take me into the living room and you got a fireplace there and you got the mantle, and up on top of the mantle, you have this shiny trophy and it says 720 on it. And you say, Rondi, look at this trophy. I have a 720 credit score. And you're polishing it and making it all pretty. And you don't want any dust on it, no fingerprints, nothing. That is what people are like when they're afraid to use their credit because they're afraid the score will go down. It's like this trophy that they got on the mantle. Sometimes your credit will need to get beat up and used in order to build a bigger, stronger, more secure foundation known as a thick credit file. And sometimes it's got to be used in order to get more credit. Think about it this way. If I come to you and let's say that I was a contractor and I was going to work on your house, I was going to remodel it, and I show up and I got my tool belt on and I got my shiny hammer and my screwdrivers and some other things, and you're looking at my hammer and you're like, is that brand new? And I go, oh yeah, this is my brand new hammer right here. Like, well, aren't you a carpenter? Oh yeah, I'm a carpenter. I don't use this hammer because I don't want to damage my hammer. Would you want to hire me as a contractor if I'm afraid to use my hammer to build something for you? No, it's ridiculous, right? But that's how a lot of people treat their credit. And they ask me all the time, is it a good idea for me to apply for X, for something? I might have an inquiry. You need to remember, in order to have great credit, you need to use your credit, and you have to have certain things. 3 credit cards. So again, if you don't have at least 3 credit cards, you have to get at least 3, and you have to get the inquiries. 90% of the inquiries will be completely ignored. After 12 months, they don't impact your credit score whatsoever. After 2 years, they automatically fall off your credit report. but you have to have 3 credit cards. So if you don't have 3, go get some more. All right. I've already talked about how many credit cards you need to have. It's 3. So let's get into that a little bit more. It doesn't matter if it's 3 department store cards or 3 secured cards or 3 unsecured cards or 3 gas company cards. It doesn't matter. FICO just wants to see 3 revolving credit cards, or technically revolving lines of credit, which is a credit card, on your credit report at all times that are active and open. 3. If you have more than 3, it's okay. It's completely okay to have 5, 10, 20. I have over 20 credit cards. Why do I have so many credit cards? Because if I ever wanted access to quick cash for my business, for my personal life, I can pull out a credit card and I could spend in a matter of a few minutes probably about $2 million, somewhere in there, if the cards all work, if I don't have balances, etc. So that's like me literally having $2 million in cash. Yes, it's got interest rate, but if I pay it in full, there's no interest. So I have access to $2 million of someone else's money absolutely free of charge. So that's why I have so many. You can't have too many credit cards. Now, if you get too many at once, that will impact your credit score, because 90% of all late payments happen within the first 2 years. So if you have too many all at once or too many new credit cards, you will see a lower credit score. But back to the hammer. Sometimes in order to build that beautiful house, you got to use your hammer, right? You can't have the trophy sitting on the mantle that's polished every day. You got to use it. That's what credit's for. Credit is a tool, not a trophy. So remember that. Credit's a tool, not a trophy. So you need to have at least 3. If you have less than 3, you need to get 3. If you have more than 3, that's fine. What's most important is, I shouldn't say most important. What is important with these credit cards that you have is you need to use them every single month. So let me get into why you need to use the credit card every single month. You need to use the credit cards every month, whether it's department store card, whether it's a Visa, American Express, Discover, whatever, or if it's a secured card, you have to use it every month. If you do not use it every month, a couple things are going to happen. Number one, FICO is going to see no activity. So at 90 days, they're going to look at your credit report. Nobody actually looks at it. It's all software, right? But FICO is going to look at it through the software and see no activity for 90 days. They're going to kick it out of the formula. They're not going to count it as an open credit card because they think it was closed and the bank just forgot to notify the credit bureaus that they closed the account. Let me give you an example. In 2017, I added a celebrity to my Capital One Venture card. At the time, I was married, and she was joint with me on this Capital One Venture card. And I added this celebrity as an authorized user because the celebrity didn't have a bunch of credit in his name. And so one of the tricks, one of the hacks, if you will, to increase your credit score is to do an authorized user, which I'll talk about later. And so I added this person as an authorized user to my credit card. They never called me, but they called my wife at the time and said, "Hey, do you know so-and-so?" And she didn't recognize the name because his celebrity name is different than his real name. And so she's like, no, I have no idea who that is. And they said, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, no, I have no idea who that person is. They didn't say your husband added this person to your venture card. Do you authorize it? They just said, do you know so-and-so? She's like, no, I have no idea. Okay, thanks. You know what they did? They closed our credit cards, closed them out. My credit card, her credit card, took 2 million points from me because they said it was fraud or they suspected it. So they stole 2 million points from me. And then they banned me from having a Capital One card in the future because they suspected fraud. It wasn't fraud. This guy hired me to increase his credit score. I put him on my credit. Now, as of today, as of this recording, 4 years later, that credit card is still on my credit report, still shows a $50,000 credit limit, shows a zero balance, and paid as agreed for the last 4 years with zero activity. And this is an example of why FICO, if you don't use that credit card every month or every 90 days, they're going to kick it out of the formula and remove it from your profile because they think the bank just forgot to update it, that it's actually closed. So it's extremely important that you use the card on a regular basis. One of the things you can do is Netflix. You probably have Netflix, right? At least somebody in the family does. I recently saw that Netflix was going to start shutting off Netflix accounts except for one place. So if you're logged in at home, your brother-in-law can't be using it at his house. They're going to stop allowing people to share the same password, which I thought is interesting that they let you do this because it's an interesting business model that you let families that don't live together and friends use the same password, but they're going to fix that. But let's say that you have Netflix and you got this credit card over here. Simply put Netflix on it and then set up automatic bill pay and automatic payments through the app on the credit card and have it pay itself in full every month. You should be able to pay $10 or $11 a month without looking at your checking account balance. You should be able to set it up to pay it in full. If you cannot pay Netflix any time of the month without NSFing your checking account, cancel Netflix. You should not have Netflix. You cannot afford to be sitting on the couch watching TV. You need to get up off your butt and get a second job or start a home-based business. Okay, so if you can't afford to set up Netflix at $11 a month for automatic payment to pay in full every month, cancel it. All right, here's another thing you can put on automatic payment on a credit card. Cell phone. We all have them, right? Every single person. I don't know if I know anyone without a cell phone. I'm sure I got some family members that don't have cell phones, but outside of my family, I don't know anyone that doesn't have one. So take your cell phone and put it on a credit card, set it up to automatically pay itself in full. Then you got your electric, right? I love electricity. I grew up in a shack with no floor, dirt floor, no running water, no electricity. I grew up extremely poor. I love electricity. I love air conditioning. My electric bill is on a credit card. My water bill is on a credit card. My gas bill for heat in the wintertime on a credit card. My car insurance on a credit card. My garbage on a credit card. So I put my monthly reoccurring bills that I know I'm going to have every single month. I put them on a credit card, and that's how I maintain activity on all of those 20 plus credit cards. You have to do this for FICO. The second reason you have to do this is if you do not use these credit cards, they will be closed on you. The bank will close the credit cards. And the only thing worse than not having a credit card is having a closed credit card that says closed by credit grantor, because that signals that there was something wrong. And that actually could have a negative impact on your credit score if it says closed by credit grantor, because future credit grantors will look at that and think there must have been a problem. They're just not reporting it late. Let's skip that person and go with someone else, because lots of people want to have the credit. Not everybody gets approved. So these are the reasons that you want to keep them open, and you want to keep them being used so they don't close them and FICO doesn't remove it from your profile. Now, let's talk about department store cards. I personally don't recommend that you get a department store card most of the time. So every single time I ever go into Kohl's or Target or any of these department stores, every single time, would you like to save 10% by opening a new credit card? I was in there recently and I bought some new workout shoes or something. It was like $33 or something on sale. And they're like, hey, you can save 10% if you open a credit card. I do not want to apply for credit, have a hard inquiry for a savings of $3. It is not worth it. Not only will I have a hard inquiry, most likely they're going to spell my name wrong, and it opens me up for identity theft. I don't want to give that teller my birthday, my social security number. They're probably going to fat finger it. They're going to think I said Randy instead of Rondi, or they're going to type it in as Rodney, and then I got to deal with that. On top of that, the biggest problem with department store cards is this. You have to use them in order to keep them open. You have to use them in order for FICO to give you credit for these credit cards. With a Visa, American Express, Discover, or Amex, you can put utility bills. You can put Netflix, car insurance, cell phone, groceries, gas, etc. on the card. Forget about it. Set up on auto bill pay, autopilot the whole thing, and forget about it, right? With the department store card, because it only works at the store, you have to go into the store and physically buy something at the store that you may or may not need just to keep it open. This is bad. This is inconvenient. It causes you to spend money. When I say spend money, you're like, well, Rondi, you said to use your Visa card to pay for electricity. That's spending money. You're going to spend the money on electricity anyways. When you have a card at Target or Kohl's, you have to go into Kohl's and buy something. Now, if you got little kids running around, maybe it makes sense. But for me, I've been into Kohl's, I think, once in 12 months, maybe twice, because I had to return something from Amazon. I think the last time I was there, I had to return it to Kohl's because I bought something I bought a weighted blanket. And it was like a 60-pound weighted blanket or 80 pounds. It was too much. So I had to take it back to Kohl's. And then when I was there, I bought the shoes. Otherwise, I don't go. But if you got a bunch of little kids running around and maybe it makes sense, then go for it. But I don't recommend it. Now, I do have a Home Depot credit card. And I keep that credit card because they give me 10% off when I purchase things using the Home Depot account. Now, I just said earlier that it wasn't worth it for me for $3 for the pair of shoes because it was $33. So I say $3.30, right? It wasn't worth it for me to get a Kohl's card to save that money. With Home Depot, at the time when I got the card, I was remodeling a house. And I spent I don't remember, $400,000 on this remodel. It was a big remodel. And $400,000, I probably spent 100,000+ at Home Depot. So for me to use that Home Depot card and get 10% off, that's $10,000 of savings. It's worth it for me. But if it was just a one-time purchase for some 2x4s or some yard lawn fertilizer, it's not worth it. So you got to think about that before you get that card. See, I would rather use one of my other credit cards and get 2 to 10% cash back off of those shoes versus getting another credit card and then having to go in and spend money on that credit card to keep it open. So when it comes to department store cards, I don't recommend that you have them. If you have department store cards, do not close them because I said they're bad. I didn't say they're bad. I said I don't recommend them. Don't close them. So what can you do to make sure they stay open? Well, my Home Depot card, for example, I use it about every 3 to 6 months. The last time I used it was probably a month and a half ago. I went and bought some yard seed. And it was just a bag of seed. It was $13 or something, $18. And so I put that on the credit card, and then my system is set up to automatically pay in full on the due date. And so I go to homedepot.com, which is actually Citibank, and I click on a couple buttons and I manage the bill pay in full, because I know I'm not going to spend a crazy amount of money at Home Depot. It's always just going to keep the account open. Now, why don't I close it? Because I've had the account open for a very long time, and that helps my credit score because it makes the average length of credit history longer. And the longer you have accounts open on your credit, the higher your credit score is. So when it comes to department store cards, I usually recommend stay away from them unless you're going to make a big purchase on like home remodels or something like that. Now, when it comes to airline credit cards or hotel chain credit cards, I like them. I have, like I said, I have an American Express Delta card, and I got an American Airlines credit cards, and I have a Marriott credit card. I personally like airline cards because I travel a lot. And so by traveling a lot and using these cards, I can get into the clubs or the lounges at the airport. So if I have a layover, I can go in, get away from the general public. I can take a nap if I want. I can get a massage. I can go to the bar for free. I can get food. Some of them have movie theaters. Some have gyms. Some have showers. And so it makes traveling way more convenient. And sometimes it's just nice to get away from everybody else, sit on a couch, have a cocktail, check out Instagram. Okay. So I like having that. Plus, you get points every time you use these cards. So for my 50th birthday, I'm going to Africa, and I'm going to spend 14 days in Africa. I'm flying first class on a triple-decker airplane. I'm sorry, I said triple. It's 2 levels. Well, actually, it is 3 because you got the storage underneath, then where everybody else sits, and then the top deck. So I'm up on the top deck. There's a bar up there and everything. First class, so it's got these big pods. They lay down beds. It's a 30 hours to get from United States to South Africa. I'm using my American Airlines credit card. It's only first class. These are it's $25,000 ticket round trip for first class. I'm paying $61 one way and like a few $100s the other way. And the difference was we're landing in London one of the ways, so we got to pay a bunch of extra tax. And 25,000 points. So I'm going to get the fly to Africa, and basically I'm going to save about $24,000 because I'm using my American Airlines card and I'm using the points. So there's the advantage of the airlines cards. with my Marriott card, I automatically get, because I have a city Marriott card for my business and I got one personally, I automatically get 35 days of credit towards my Platinum Elite status, which means I only have to stay there another 15 days a year in order to maintain that elite status. Now, why would I want the elite status? Number one, automatic suite upgrade, and I don't have to pay for it. Number two, free breakfast every day for 2 people. Every time I go, I get a free gift. Every time I stay, I don't have to check out until 4 o'clock. So I get automatic late checkout. And in some hotels for Marriott, I don't have to check in. I can simply use my phone, and that actually unlocks the hotel room door. So these are some advantages of airline cards and hotel cards. So I highly recommend them. Now, I'm not saying to go out and get every single airline card out there. Sometimes it's worth it because of the points and stuff. But, a lot of these come with annual fees. Some of them are $600-700 a year. So unless you are using them in a way that you're going to get more back than what it costs you, I wouldn't get the credit card. Okay. I have a friend that's got the Marriott, and he stays, it's crazy, every year he stays for 60 days straight in Hawaii in a suite for free, because he travels so much and he uses his Marriott card everywhere he goes, and he stays at Marriott's. Because what happens once you get to a certain level, you start getting free nights. Okay. And so every year he stays in Hawaii, him and his wife and their little dog, for 2 months for free with room service in a suite on a beach, all provided by the Marriott credit card. So there's some advantages of the credit cards. All right, let's talk about utilization. Properly using the credit card once you have the 3 credit cards. FICO wants to see the credit cards being used every month, and they want to see your utilization rate between 1 and 5%. 1 and 5. Okay. For every 5% that you spend on that credit card and you leave on the credit card, you're going to lose approximately 5 points. So if you max out a credit card, you're essentially going to lose up to 100 points. And I'll get into how that works a little bit later. So they want to see 1 to 5% utilization rate. Now, what's utilization rate? Utilization rate is how much of the credit you are utilizing. So for example, if you have a $1,000 credit limit and you spend $50, that's 5% utilization. It is a wash between 1 and 5. They don't give you any extra points. They don't take away any points. If you go to 6% or higher, you're going to start losing 5 points for every 5% that you use. So if you max out the credit card, assume that you're going to lose 100 points. Now, I said between 1 and 5. Well, what happens if you're less than 1? You're going to lose points. The neutral zone is 1 and 5. If you go less than 1, where it's paid off, or let's say you've spent $20 on the $1,000 credit card, well, that's less than 1%, so you lose points. You need to maintain 1 to 5% to have the most amount available points on every single credit card. Now, you don't have to get this anal about it. Unless, let's say that you are a 639. You got new credit. You got some other things on there that are preventing you from having great credit. So you're fair at 639. But in order for you to get that mortgage at the best rate, you need to be 640. In order to get that car loan at 0% interest, you need to be 640. In order to get that credit card with all these points and rewards and benefits like I was talking about, you got to be 640. But you're a 639. That's when you really care about the 1 to 5%. You need to look at the credit report and say, oh, I'm at 10% utilization rate. I'm going to pay that down to 3% because it's between 1 and 5. That will then raise your credit score when it reports. That's about the only time that you got to be super anal about the percentages. It's when you are just a couple points away, or when you're trying to get as many points as possible. So, for example, I talked to a banker last night, a business banker, and he said that at his bank, if I deposit money into his bank account or into my bank account at his bank, after 96 days of having an account open, they will give me a line of credit for the amount that I deposited. So if I deposit $10,000 into a bank account over a 90-day period, technically 96, but 90 days, they'll give me automatically a $10,000 line of credit. If I have a 780 credit score or higher, they'll multiply that times 4. So if I put 10,000 in, they'll give me a $40,000 line of credit. So in this case, I would want to make sure my credit score was 780 or higher. So in order to qualify for that, I would not use my credit cards more than that 1 to 5%. Does that make sense? So that's a real life example of wanting to make sure you're 780 or higher. Now, some of these banks are 640, 680, etc. So you got to ask the person that's helping you with it, what's the minimum? And then look at the credit report. If you're above 5%, you got to pay it below 5%. If you're at 0, you got to put some money on it. Now, the next part of this. Does it matter if you're not using all the credit cards and you're only using one? So let's say you got 5 credit cards, 4 of them have 0 balances and 1 has a balance on it. One's at 1 to 5%. Will that matter? Yeah, it's going to make a big difference because FICO is going to ignore the 4. Why are they going to ignore it? Because you don't have any money on it. There's no activity. So they're kicking out of the algorithm. So they look at it as if you have 1 credit card, or they treat it as if you have 1. You need 3. But if you have 5 total and you're not using 4 of them, you really only have 1 according to FICO. The other part of it on the utilization rate, if you properly manage the utilization rate on, say, these other credit cards, and then you max this one out, that could have a negative impact on your credit score if you don't normally do that. So a few days ago, I posted on social media that my Equifax credit score was 809. My Experian Equifax was in 650 range, somewhere in there. So it's 156 points difference. Why? Because I had 2 credit cards that were maxed out. As of today, they're completely paid off. And now I have 800 plus credit scores on all 3 credit bureaus. But before, it was only on 1 bureau because the 2 credit cards that are maxed out don't report to Equifax. And so Equifax didn't know. So that's why I had the 809 credit score on Equifax, the 650s on the other ones. Why did I lose 156 points by maxing out 2 credit cards if I have 18, 19 other credit cards out there? I'm way below the utilization rate of 5%, way below when you add up all the rest of the credit cards. And I'm using them all every month. So FICO is looking at it. Why did I lose the points? Because I don't normally max out those credit cards. I don't normally max out any credit cards. And the fact that I maxed out these credit cards, FICO thinks something may be going on. So they're going to artificially lower my credit score short term, make sure I make a couple payments, and then they eventually raise it back up. Now, I didn't want to eventually go back up. I want to go right back up. And so I paid them off yesterday. As of today, my score went right back up because they're paid off now. And I showed FICO, hey, I'm not at risk of missing a payment. Everything's cool. I just used them. Now, why did I max them out? Because I'm trying to increase the credit limit. And those banks, American Express and Citi, are not going to increase my credit limit unless I use all of the credit they already gave me. And so that's why I maxed them out. I wanted the bank to see that I need more than the credit limit that they already gave me. And then I paid it off. And now next month, I'm going to call them and I'm going to ask for a credit line increase. This is what you have to do sometimes to increase your credit. But because I maxed those out and I don't normally max it out, FICO automatically lowered my credit score. So if you're in that situation and you want to manage it a little bit better, you can spread out the credit card usage across all of them, or you go 6 months of some of them maxed out and then paid off, etc., and that will fix it. Now, FICO Model 10, which no one is using, by the way, but with FICO Model 10, nobody that I know of, FICO Model 10 accounts for situations like mine. Situations like yours, if you max out a credit card and then you pay it off. FICO Model 10 looks at trending data and they won't penalize me on those credit cards that are maxed out because they know that I pay them off in full every month. But FICO Model 8, which is what you see predominantly online with FICO credit scores, or the Vantage credit score model of Vantage 3, you're going to see that they don't look at whether or not you pay it off in full because they don't know. FICO Model 10 knows, nobody's using it. FICO Model 8 does not. When you get a mortgage, it's FICO Model 2, which was developed in 1996, back in the day that people didn't walk around with 20 credit cards. People didn't have 30 inquiries a year. People didn't have multiple car payments. And so that score model, which is 25 years old, is outdated. But it is required by the federal government to be used when it comes to getting a mortgage. And I've gone over why I think they require this outdated software. It's all about greed. It's all about charging you more money. That's my opinion. Now that I talked about utilization rate, I want to talk about why you should never close a credit card. When you close a credit card, it actually has a pretty significant negative impact on your credit score. When you pay off a car loan, it's going to impact your credit score a little bit. When you pay off a mortgage or refinance it, it's going to impact your credit score a little bit. But when you close a credit card, you can see a substantial decrease in your credit score. Because generally, when someone closes a credit card, it's because they are suffering some type of financial problem that the bank doesn't know about yet, generally. Now, FICO has been around since 1956. So they got a lot of experience, 65 years worth of data. And they've created billions of scores over the last 65 years. They know that when someone closes a credit card, it's usually not a good reason. Something is going on. Whether it's they're listening to the lunatic on the radio that says you should close your credit card, or they're getting divorced, or they maxed it out, they forgot to make a payment, they got pissed off at the bank because the customer service person was rude, or the customer service person would not waive the late fee. It hasn't reported late yet. So what do? The person closes it because they think that's going to fix it. And it does not ever fix the problem. It makes it much worse. So unless the annual fee is so high that you're not getting a benefit out of it, don't close the credit card, even if it's a department store card, because it will have a negative impact on your credit score. So never close a credit card. All right. Credit line increases. I talked about utilization, and you need utilization between 1% and 5%. What happens if you got $1,000 credit limit and you max it out? Your score goes down. But you need over $1,000. But you can't get the credit line increase because your credit score is low because you keep maxing out the credit card. So here's something you need to do. Couple things. You need to pay off the credit cards. Only use a little bit, 1% on all of them, so you get the maximum amount of points available. Wait a month until all of the credit cards are showing 1% utilization rate, highest credit score available. Then you apply for a credit line increase. Only apply for a credit line increase once every 6 months. Once every 6 months or twice a year, you ask for a credit line increase, but only after 30 days has gone by at 1%, and they're all showing 1% on your credit report. This way you have the highest credit limit. The next thing, if you're going to ask for a credit line increase, you need to have used all of the credit that they gave you before. So like when I was talking with my American Express and Citi, I want them to double the credit limits. I had to max out the credit cards. Then I'm going to wait, I'll pay them off, wait a month, and then I'm going to ask for an increase. You never ask for an increase when the credit card is maxed out, ever. That's the worst possible time to ask for the credit line increase. One, your credit score is going to be lower. Two, you look desperate. Banks do not want to loan money to people who need the money. And if you got the credit card maxed out, you're showing them that you need the money. So do not ask for a credit line increase more than once every 6 months. Do not do it when your credit card's maxed out. Okay? Now, if you max out one credit card and then you do the other one, that's fine. You can move stuff around, but you need to show them that you need more credit. So if you got a $10,000 credit card and you've never spent more than $5,000 ever, they're most likely not going to give you a higher credit line increase because you don't need it. So now I want to go over how you can actually hack the system, if you will, to show the high balance that you need it without actually costing you any money. So one of the things you can do, if it is a Visa card and you are a Costco member, you go to Costco, you go to the jewelry section. You know that section I'm talking about that's got the nice watches and the earrings and the rings and the necklaces, right? You buy something in there that is going to max out your credit card. So let's say back to the $10,000 Visa card, and Costco actually has the Citi card. And let's say your credit limit's $10,000 and you want a $20,000 credit limit because you use it quite a bit for business and the utilization rate is messing up your personal credit score. So you go to that little jewelry thing, you find the most expensive piece of jewelry. Maybe you got to buy 2 or 3 of them, 2 or 3 items, but you want to get it very, very close to that $10,000 if you don't owe any money on it. You get it, you go up to the cashier, you pay for it, you walk out of the Costco with your receipt, and in this case, $10,000 on that Citi card. And then you wait, and you wait approximately 30 days. You can check your credit on a regular basis. If you know when they're going to report, then you can just wait until it gets reported. The report date is almost always the statement date. So when you look at that credit card, it's going to have the statement, the ending statement date, and then it's going to have the due date, which is usually 2 weeks later. So if it says the due date is August 15th, your statement date was probably around August 1st. Okay? So you look at the statement, you try to make your purchase around the statement date right before. It then gets reported on your credit file or your credit report that it's maxed out. You then go back to Costco with your receipt and the jewelry that's never been opened. It's still in the cellophane, and you go and you return it. This is how you can max out a credit card without it actually costing you anything. All right, what if you don't have a Costco membership? You can do the same thing at Home Depot. You can do it at Walmart. You can do it at Target. Apple's a great place to go in. You can buy things at Apple. But I like to buy jewelry or something small that's extremely expensive. So that way I can max out the credit card with something I can fit in my hand versus buying a bunch of computers or big screen TVs or something. So this is how you can max it out without it really costing you anything. You just return it. Now what happens when you return it? It shows up as a payment the following month, and it looks like you utilized all of it because you did. And then you ask for the credit line increase after everything again is showing 1% and you have the most amount of points. So do that about every 6 months. All right, with credit cards, it is really important that you have auto pay set up on all of them. Now, I've talked about this before, and I'm going to talk about it again because this is really common. I get people almost every single week that have all kind of money that need to hire me to fix their credit because they got a 30-day late for an annual fee that they didn't know about. And they were traveling, they got busy, they forgot to pay it, they didn't get notified it was due. Maybe the credit card company created an annual fee and it didn't ever have one before. That's really common nowadays. And now I got to fix their credit because of an annual fee, a $3 minimum payment. I had a guy that I went to a show with him and his wife in Las Vegas. This is back in 2017. And we were talking a little bit, and we were talking about some stuff. And I said, oh, yeah, he's like, what can I do to make sure my credit's always good? And I said, you need to make sure you have auto pay. And he's like, oh, yeah, don't worry about that. I pay my stuff off in full every month. I'm like, well, it's really important to have auto pay. No, it's fine. Fast forward a couple weeks. He had just bought a $65 million jet. $65 million Gulfstream. Comes back into Vegas. We're out to dinner. He whispers to me, Randy, I need you to fix my credit. I had a credit card I didn't know about, had an annual fee. Now I got a 30-day late. Didn't know about it until I bought this jet. I paid cash for the jet, but I got bad credit now. This stuff happens all the time. So it's extremely important that you have auto pay set up. So here's what you do. You get the credit card, you go on your phone, you open up the app, you click on it, you put in all the stuff, you put in your credit card, you activate your app, then you go to payments, manage, auto pay, set up, pay either in full or pay the minimum payment. So if it's a credit card you're going to use on a regular basis and you're going to put a lot of money on it and you need to manage when you pay it because of paychecks, then put the minimum payment. If it's the Netflix credit card, pay in full. And then send another payment in either manually on the app or via bill pay to where you're always ahead. The reason why is auto payment, when you first get the credit card in, when you first set up auto pay, it's usually 1 month behind. So that the following month, it doesn't work until the next month. So you want to pay it ahead and pay really close attention that the auto pay is set up. And this is another reason I recommend that you use paper statements, not e-statements, because you physically get a statement every month You can open your bills up, look at it, says auto pay, etc., file it. Okay, so it's really important that you have auto pay set up on all of your credit cards, because I don't want you to have to hire me to remove a late payment for $3 or $4. Okay. Now, let's talk about keeping them open. I've already talked a little bit. Never close a credit card, ever. Always leave it open unless you can't afford the annual fee or if there's some problem. The next thing, the annual fee. Almost every credit card that has an annual fee will waive the annual fee the very first year. Almost all of them. If you are an active duty military, a police officer, a firefighter, a nurse, or a doctor, or a school teacher, most of these credit card companies like American Express that has that $700 annual fee will waive the annual fee year after year after year. If you are active duty military, and that includes active duty National Guard, school teacher, nurse, firefighter, or doctor, police officer. So if you're in those 6 categories, they will many times waive that annual fee every single year. The first year, you always just got to ask them. The second year and on, usually they'll give you a 50% discount. So it's worth the phone call. Now, if it's $20, maybe that's worth the phone call. Maybe it's not. Maybe every 6 months you call and you ask for a credit line increase, and at the same time you ask them to waive the annual fee. Okay. Now I want to talk about what are the best credit cards that you can have, because I get this question a lot. What are the best credit cards that I can have? The answer to that question, what's the best credit cards I can have, is it really depends. It depends on you. If you travel a lot like I do, I personally think the best credit cards to have are the airline credit cards, so I can get into their clubs and their lounges. Previously, if you had an airline credit card, you could go into the lounge anytime. So you could fly Spirit Airlines and go into the Delta Club. You can't do that anymore. In order to get into the clubs, you got to be flying with that airline. So now, in order to get into a Delta Club with a Delta credit card, you got to be flying Delta in Alaska, etc. So if you travel a lot, I like the airline cards. Now, my favorite credit card of all credit cards for redemption, to redeem your points, is Capital One Venture. It's the easiest. It's 2% on every purchase, no blackout dates, and you can redeem it for pretty much anything on your statement. Almost anything, not quite anything. So if you go out and you spend $1,000, you get 2,000 in points, which is roughly $20. You go in and you redeem the $20 Uber ride, and now you don't have to pay the $20. It's super easy. I like Capital One for that reason. I don't like Capital One because they're all business credit cards with personal guarantees that report to your personal credit. And the reason they're business credit cards is because of the Credit Card Act that Obama created. That's for personal credit cards. Doesn't apply to business credit cards. So Capital One calls all their credit cards business credit cards, but they're really personal credit cards. That's the main reason I don't like Capital One, is they do report to your personal credit. The second reason is they're kind of a pain in the ass to deal with. And they do stuff like close your account and steal your points. So now I actually have a Capital One card again. I had to use someone else's social to get it, and I'm an authorized user on it. And I can tell you this, I do not let my points rack up. I go in once a month and I redeem all my points. That way, they can never steal them from me again. My favorite other credit card for just cash back would be the the Citi cards or the Chase cards for 2% cash back. My one Citibank card is 1% when I make a purchase, 1% when I pay it off. It's cash. It connects to my Amazon account. I just made a purchase earlier today. I bought something, went to check out, and it said, oh, you got so many points. I hit redeem points. Amazon shipping it out free of charge because I'm redeeming the points. Okay. So my favorites are the American or the airline cards if you travel a lot. I like the Capital One Venture card for the redemption because it's super easy. And then I like the 2% cashback credit cards. And then my business credit card of choice would be the American Express cards. The American Express Platinum card gives you 1% cash back or 1.5% if it's a $5,000 purchase or higher. Then there is the American Express Gold card that will give you 5% cash back on all marketing. So I'm actually applying for this credit card next month, not this month because I'm buying a house. So next month, I'm going to apply for this American Express Gold card because my business spends a lot of money on Facebook advertising. And maybe you're a business owner. And if you are, and you spend money on marketing, I recommend that American Express card because you get 5% cash back on marketing expenses. And then there's extra bonuses in there. So those are my favorite credit cards. You can go to creditcards.com, Nerd Wallet. I would avoid Credit Karma unless you have lower credit because generally Credit Karma's website promotes subprime credit cards. They don't generally have the really good credit cards on there. So I would go to Nerd Wallet or I would go to creditcards.com. To learn more about credit cards and how that works, thepointsguy.com is a friend of mine, thepointsguy.com. He's got lots of good information on there on how to use the credit cards in order to get the most amount of points and et cetera. So he really breaks down the best credit card, thepointsguy.com. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. All right, so that wraps up today's recording on how to use credit cards for the 7 days to 740 credit score. I'm going to go now and open it up. There's some people here live. I'm going to open it up for Q&A. Please, with your questions, please make sure the questions have to do with today's topic, and then I'll do my best to answer them. Before I do that, Chastity, is there anything else you want me to cover on that?
No, that was really great.
Okay. All right, guys. Cool. Thank you so much for sharing it. With having 3 credit cards. How about this one right here? All right, here we go. With having 3 credit cards, how do you all go about using the 3? I think I answered that.
You did that quickly.
I think I answered it, but in case you weren't on, use it for your utilities. Netflix as a utility, but anyway. Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, cell phone, electricity, gas, sewer, water, electric, car insurance. That's 10 things right there. So just use those with that.
You pretty much covered all the questions that I wanted people to go over.
Okay.
I mean, there's this.
Robert from Facebook says, if you ask for credit line increase, they're going to hit you with an inquiry. Yes, they are, my friend. And now we're going to go back to don't treat your credit like a trophy. Treat it like a tool. Remember the carpenter with the brand new hammer that was afraid to get his hammer dirty? You would never hire that person. Treat your credit as a tool, not a trophy. Southwest Reward credit card. Hey, look, if you fly Southwest, I highly recommend that credit card because they have, the last time I saw it, it was a 100,000 point if you get the credit card, and you always get companion for free. So if you travel with a companion and you use Southwest Airlines, highly recommend the credit card. It is a great credit card for the companion ticket. If you don't, I personally don't fly Southwest. And the reason why is what I have found is Southwest costs more than first class on almost all the other airlines. I like to fly first class. I like to sit in a bigger seat so I can do work and make that time on the airplane productive. Southwest doesn't have first class. And for example, for me to fly from Boise to San Diego, first class round trip is less than $300. For me to fly Southwest from Boise to San Diego, it's almost $700. So I can fly twice first class on Alaskan Airlines to once on Southwest and be crammed in with everybody else. So if you fly Southwest with a partner, Southwest is great to go. If not, I'd get a different card.
I have one.
All right. Spending problems. Make a credit burger. So here's something that I did this a lot when I did TV interviews. And when I do TV interviews, I will actually do this illustration. And that is, if you have a spending problem, so if you are not paying off the credit cards in full every single month, you have a spending problem. You do not have an income problem. You have a spending problem. You are spending more money than you're making. That is not an income problem. Most people spend more than they need to. I looked at somebody's credit card statements recently. She was spending over $2,000 a month on going out to eat. And she said, well, it's cheaper for me to go out to eat than it is at home. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way groceries would cost for one person $2,000 a month, even if you're eating Wagyu beef every day. She's like, well, I like to go out. Well, that's why you have money problems. That's why you're not paying off your credit cards, because you're overutilizing the credit cards and you're spending money that you really don't have. So if you're that person and you are spending it, I don't recommend that you close it. So if the credit card has a balance, you take the credit cards, you get a package of hamburger, 1 or 2 pounds, you put the credit cards in the middle of it, and you make a hamburger sandwich. The credit cards are inside the hamburger, and then you put that in the freezer. If you do what other people tell you, which is cut up the credit card, if there's an emergency, you don't have the credit card to use. Once it's paid off, you want to be able to use that card. If you put them in a Tupperware container full of water, it's super easy to thaw that container out and get those credit cards. Versus if it's inside a pound of hamburger, you got to wait a little while to thaw that out. Because if you stick it in the microwave, it's going to ruin the credit cards because of the magnetic strip. So your option is to put it in a sink full of hot water, which is going to thaw it out over an hour or two, which gives you time to regroup and decide, do you really need the credit card to buy something? Because it was spur of the moment. Where if it's an emergency, you got the time for it to thaw out. So I personally would say take the credit cards, put them in the hamburger, put it in the freezer. That prevents you from overspending. Now, you don't have to go that extreme. I personally only carry, I think, 3 credit cards with me now. I carry a debit card that I use at Winco and Winco only because they only accept debit cards or cash. I carry a Chase Freedom card that's personal. And then I carry my American Express business card. And that's it. All the rest of them are in my safe. All of them are on automatic payment. All of them have some type of bill on them every single month. And then when I travel, I usually get a couple more and I take them with me. Okay, because I don't want one to get shut down when I'm traveling. I'm just looking at some of these questions, guys. Anthony from Facebook says, sorry, just joining. How does using your credit card and utilities affect your credit? Real quick with that, if you're just tuning in, the reason I like to put utilities on my credit cards is so they're always being used every single month. I know I have an idea how much is spent on that credit card, so I can set it up to automatically pay itself in full. I personally know I have $11 in my bank account at all times to pay Netflix. I know there's at least $50 a month in there for my electric bill. There's at least $20 a month for my trash bill, etc. So I always have a buffer. So I set those credit cards up so they're used every month and paid off in full automatically every single month. There, that's a good one. I was going to pick that one. Jason from Facebook says, what's a good credit score to close secured and get better rate cards? The good credit starts at 740. So I would not recommend closing a secured credit card until you're 740 or higher. And that might take a couple of years, but that's my recommendation. You asked, I'm telling you, do not close the credit card, the secured card, until you're 740 or higher. This is a good point. When it comes in, so Chastity, I want you to make a note of this and use this part of the secured credit card portion. When it comes to secured credit cards, it is far better to have 3 credit cards with a $200 credit limit than 1 credit card with a $600 credit limit. So let me repeat that. When it comes to secured credit cards, it's better to have 3 with low credit limits than 1 with a high credit limit. One of the problems I see people do is they'll go and they'll get secured credit cards and they'll put $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 on a secured credit card. You can't get that money back unless you close it. So I recommend you get these secured credit cards with like $200. And so you're not tempted to close it right away because it's only $200. So I would rather see you get 3 credit cards at $200 a piece than 1 credit card at $600 a piece. And then you're not tempted to close it.
Also, before you close the secured card, you should make sure the unsecured ones or the.
Oh, and the other thing is if you are going to close that secured credit card, make sure you're already approved and you have in your hand the new unsecured credit card. So you need 3 open secured. You need 3 open unsecured credit cards before you ever think about closing a secured card. And you must have at least a 740 credit before ever closing those secured credit cards. Because what's going to happen when you close that secured credit card, let's say you're not 740, you're going to drop down into the low 600s. So you want to have the best score possible before you ever think about closing those cards. Gregory from Facebook says, I have 3 credit cards, $300, $400, and $1,500 credit limits. Is $1,500 my new minimum in regards to future credit cards? No, it's not your new minimum. They generally don't do minimum credit scores. They do maximum credit scores. They generally don't do minimum credit limits. They do maximum credit limits. So if your max credit limit, Greg, is $1,500, you will probably be approved for somewhere around that $1,500 range. Could be $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000, but you're not going to get a $35,000 credit limit because you got one $1,500 card. It's going to be pretty close, somewhere around that $2,000 to $3,000 range. And then you go 6 months with $3,000. You ask for $5,000. You can go from $5,000 to $10,000. Can't go from $1,500 to $15,000. So small increments. Good question. Dana says, what do you think about manufactured spending on credit cards to get the points? Is it still possible? Absolutely, it's still possible. Talked about it earlier with Costco. In my business credit course, I talk a lot about manufactured spending, how you can get, I literally lay out a plan to get 500,000 points without spending a single dime. 500,000 points without spending a dime through manufacturer spending. And I do that on the business credit course. I'm not going to cover it here because this is a basic credit course for folks trying to get to that 740 range. It has nothing to do with the business credit, but I like the question. Yes, you can still do it. Yes, I still recommend it. Tyra from YouTube says, utilization. Any best practices for forcing bureaus to update when they are delayed in reporting monthly, similar to what is done during rapid rescoring for mortgages? I wish. They're not. There's credit card companies that are notoriously behind. Capital One is usually 3 months behind. So if I pulled my credit today in July 2021, Capital One probably reported me in April. I don't know why this is the case, but this is how it is with Capital One. So no, there is not a way to force them to update other than through rapid rescore. If you're doing a mortgage, then you can do it with your statement. Great question. Love it. Just unfortunately, there's not a way to force them. Anthony from Facebook says, is there an ideal credit score to make $30,000 to $40,000 purchase? No. Your credit score has nothing to do with your ability to purchase. And I would say that your credit score does not get you approved for a higher credit limit either. It only gets you denied. Most of these cards that I'm talking about with the high credit limits, the 30, 40, 50s, thousands, those are business credit cards. Most personal credit cards are around 5,000 to 7,000, where your average business card starts at 30,000 and goes up from there. So that's why I recommend business credit cards over personal credit if you have a business, because they also don't report, except for Capital One, they don't report on your personal credit. And when you max them out, they actually increase your credit score on business credit versus reducing your credit score on personal credit. So it's not a credit score that gets you that 30 to 40,000. It is the likelihood of you being able to pay back 30,000 if you maxed it out. And so you will find when you log into these apps, another reason you should be using the app on your phone is when you log in, every 6 months or so, they're going to ask you to update your income. And if Capital One, for example, did it today, I logged in and I made a payment on Capital One, and it asked me what my current income was. Like I said, I'm an authorized user on someone else's account, so I put in what they make because I can't put in what I make because I'm an authorized user. So I put in what they make, hit save. Most likely they're going to increase the credit line or credit limit because this person that I got on the card with, which happens to be my daughter, is making more money this year than she was last year. So the $30,000 to $40,000 credit limits has to do mostly with your ability to pay back $30,000 if you maxed out the card. All right, Dana from YouTube, Dana McWhite, which is a picture of Dana White. I think that's Dana White on there, says what to do about the supposed Biden shutting down the credit agencies and having CFPB being the new credit agency.
What do you think about it?
Oh, what is it? What do I think about it? I think it's absolutely the worst idea ever. I don't know if it's the worst idea, but it's a pretty stupid idea. I mean, think about it this way. Can you imagine anything that has to do with your credit going to a DMV and dealing with those people on your credit? And that's essentially what's going to happen. Is if they governmentize it, it is going to be so much worse than it is now. It's already bad, but it's so much worse if the government gets involved. So I don't think it's a good idea at all. And it has nothing to do with my profession, nothing to do with it. Because I'd figure out a way to make money off of it anyway. I just think it's a super stupid idea. It's like Obamacare. You know, yeah, it helps some people, but for most people, it is a bad idea. So hopefully Dana McWhite, they don't do it. No. Jason from, I'm not laughing at you. I'm just looking at the thing here. You bought an item, returned it. They reported it as 1 day late. Well, that sounds like you bought an item. You had a minimum payment. You didn't return it prior to the minimum payment, and you didn't make the minimum payment. That's why they reported you late, and that sucks, Jason. So that brings up a really good point. If you do what I said and you go to Costco and you buy some jewelry or some cool watches and it reports, make sure you make a minimum payment and then return it, because you don't want a late payment on there. So generally what probably happened was you waited too long to return it. So it's a good rule of thumb is to have automatic payment set up. So it automatically makes the minimum payment. And then when you return it, you actually have a credit on the credit card. So that sucks, Jason. You need to get removed. I know a guy. Yeah, reach out to us. If you need us to remove that late payment, just reach out. Give us a call. 1-800-475-7267. It's 1-800-475-7267. We'll get you enrolled and take care of that for you. All right, guys. So that wraps up today's 7 days of 740 credit. We're going to do another one later on today. What's the subject later today, Chelsea? Oh, installment loans in half hour or so on how to manage your credit with installment loans, etc. So hopefully you can come back. See you later.